In the early 1960s, Gene Roddenberry had an idea for a show which he called Star Trek. In early 1965, a pilot was created titled The Cage, which was shown to NBC but was rejected, although NBC did show enough interest to have a second pilot created titled Where No Man Has Gone Before. Now, today I am going to be reviewing both of these episodes as I start my journey through the original series. Needless to say, I am going to be following the production order rather than the Airdate order in this case. I will be reviewing about 2 to 3 episodes at a time in the future. Anyway, both of these episodes did eventually get aired. The Cage was finally aired on October 15, 1988, where it was seen by audiences for the first time, and Where No Man Has Gone Before ended up getting aired as the 3rd episode of the first season, although in an edited form. The Cage itself is very different from the rest of Star Trek in that it had a totally different cast, minus the inclusion of Leonard Nimoy as Spock. One thing that Star Trek was known for in the 1960s was being revolutionary in that it had both women on the bridge as well as a black woman, Uhura. The show was also the first time an interracial kiss was ever shown on screen. The Cage, however, is far less revolutionary and also far less interesting in that regard. Everyone follows the captain's orders without question, which really doesn't create any interesting conflicts here. Also, almost everyone in the show are white males. In one scene early on in the episode, a woman walks onto the bridge and Captain Pike gets annoyed and states that he just can't get used to having a woman on the bridge. While this is very similar to what a lot of shows at the time would do, the actual Star Trek series would be much smarter about it. It showed a time where a woman would be on the bridge, and that fact wouldn't even be brought up. It would simply be accepted. Now I'm rambling, I guess. As for the actual plot, well, the Enterprise receives an 18-year-old distress signal from a nearby planet, so they decide to go down and check it out. Oddly enough, there are 3 inhabitants on the planet who have very strong mind powers. They basically create an illusion in Pike's mind that he is living a perfect and happy life so that the aliens can get Pike to reproduce and be happy as they want to repopulate and rebuild their destroyed planet. This is a very interesting idea, and it is difficult to tell at times what is or isn't real, such as when Pike shoots a hole in a glass wall, which would actually allow him to escape, but the illusion in his mind is that the gun didn't work to begin with. So even though there's an easy hole to escape through, he wouldn't know to use it. The real crazy idea is whether it is better to live in a fake reality where you are perfectly happy, or real life where you probably won't be. Also, what is it that makes reality? If you can return to the same place every day and feel it with all of your senses, how can it not be real? These are some really big ideas which I found great to integrate into the show. It is these ideas that really carry the episode, as other than that, the characters really are very plain and uninteresting, and the acting isn't really that great either. From what I've heard, a lot of the footage is reused in the episode The Menagerie, so perhaps it would simply be better to watch that episode, as you get both the ideas as well as the better characters of Kirk, Spock, and McCoy in the framing part of the episode. I would really only recommend The Cage to classic science fiction buffs or those who want to explore the early history of Star Trek. Oh, sorry. Now on to Where No Man Has Gone Before. This is the first episode to feature the main cast for the rest of the series, such as William Shatner playing Captain Kirk. The Enterprise receives an odd distress signal, which is about 2 centuries old, and learns that the sender of the message, the USS Valiant, had a lot of research going on in relation to ESP, or extrasensory perception. Soon enough, they pass through the same danger that the Valiant had passed through, and 2 members of the crew become unconscious, Gary Mitchell and Elizabeth Daner. Both happen to have high levels of ESP. Gary's eyes change to an odd glow, but otherwise he seems normal at first when he awakens. Soon enough, however, his intelligence and mental power start increasing drastically to the point that he becomes a danger to the ship, and Kirk must decide whether or not to kill one of his best friends. I feel as though the stakes in this episode are really high, and the characters are quite intriguing. I do like how the episode goes into what it is like to be God, and how important morals really are in making us truly human. I think that the episode really shows how it is really these morals and perhaps the ability to think and feel that truly makes us human, not our level of intelligence. Even so, I feel as though this episode doesn't focus too much on these big ideas, but rather on the threat of Mitchell. I kind of wish that the episode either went as a full-out action episode against Mitchell, or a big idea episode rather than not really doing either too effectively. Oddly enough, I would have to say that this episode has the opposite problem as The Cage. While The Cage had some really interesting ideas, but not the interesting characters to back it up, Where No Man Has Gone Before has the interesting characters, but not enough really going on. I also feel as though ESP really isn't a very scientific concept as to be presented on Star Trek, as it seems more like a supernatural idea. Now, like I said earlier, Where No Man Has Gone Before actually has two different versions. There's the aired version, which I just reviewed, as well as the original unaired version, which is now available on the Season 3 Blu-ray set for the original series. This original version basically just has a few scenes extended a little bit without really adding anything, and also adds on-screen acts to the episode, which are kind of unnecessary. While these changes don't really affect the episode at all, one thing I did like was the addition of an extended opening, which really helps introduce the show to a new audience and bring us right in. So the unaired version is probably better if you're watching through the series in production order, but if you're watching them by Airdate, I would recommend the aired version, as it wouldn't make too much sense to introduce the Enterprise and the characters in the third episode, fourth if you count The Cage. As for continuity, well, The Cage actually follows the previous captain of the Enterprise, Captain Pike, in the year 2254, which is 13 years before the start of the actual series. Scratch that, make that 12 years. Where No Man Has Gone Before takes place in 2265, versus other episodes of the series start in 2266 or later. Stardates are used in the episode, but I would like to get out of the way that stardates in the original series basically meant nothing. Originally, Gene Roddenberry wanted to hide when the series took place, so these numbers were made up for each episode. They don't necessarily follow one another or really have any connection to real time. It wasn't until the next generation that the stardates would really be translated into years, and now with the J.J. Abrams series, the stardates literally are years. Anyway, as a whole, I would say that these two episodes both have their strengths and weaknesses, but The Cage is probably the better of the two. I'm going to give The Cage a 2 out of 5, and Where No Man Has Gone Before a 1.5 out of 5 for both versions, as they are both practically identical, and I wouldn't necessarily find one version better than the other.